Okay, welcome to the Assembly. I'll call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. This is regular scheduled meeting for Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Tim Hale.
Here.
Stephanie Nowers. Here. George McKee. Here. Robert Yent will not be present. Moki 2.
Here.
Jesse Sumner.
Here.
Tam Bovee. Here. Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Let's take a look at the agenda. Any items? I guess Mr. Manager wants to lead out on this.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, would like to request that we pull Resolution 21-076, which is the PACE program. We'll pull that from the agenda completely and bring it back at a later date here in the near future, likely in October. And the second request is to pull Resolution 21-095, which is the state redistricting, pull it from the consent agenda so that we can have a staff report and discuss it.
Mr. McKee?
I would also like to pull Resolution 21096. This is a resolution ratifying the labor agreement. And I would also like to pull AM 21090, which is approval of change order for $30,000 to for the Alaska State Historic Preservation Grant Funds.
Okay, we're going to back up a little bit. We need, is there any objection to pulling Resolution 21076 to start with for the
Completely off the agenda.
completely off the agenda? Mr. Manager made that request. Okay, seeing no objection, that is pulled completely off the agenda. And, okay, now.
It's the first thing that George asked to pull.
So now on Mr. McKee's, which items were they, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, I got AM 21090. I apologize, Assemblymember McKee. I missed the first one you asked.
Resolution 21096.
Okay. Any objection to pulling those two items?
Yep.
Seeing no objection, those two items are pulled from the consent agenda. Also, any other changes to the, Ms. Bovee?
I'd like to pull resolution 21-091.
21091. Any objection? Seeing none, that's pulled also. Anything else? Okay, let's go to the Pledge of Allegiance. Otherwise, the agenda is approved as presented with the items pulled from the consent agenda. Patty Fisher, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, before we go on, I have a proclamation I want to read. Whereas Alaskans have witnessed and endured damage from natural disasters, including fires, floods, earthquakes, volcanoes, and other inclement weather events, and whereas being informed and prepared to face these natural disasters is critical to surviving them, by being informed, we can help protect our communities and save lives. And whereas every Alaskan can prepare for potential disasters by developing and practicing a family emergency response plan, and whereas National Preparedness Month is part of the Federal Emergency Management Agency's READY campaign, and there are many resources available at www.ready.gov to help families plan for disasters, and whereas precautionary steps, including setting plans for communication with family and friends, gathering 2 weeks worth of necessary supplies, knowing the risks of disasters for this area, and teaching younger generations how to handle disasters independently in case they are alone when an event occurs. And whereas National Preparedness Month helps us to focus on promoting a culture of preparedness for disasters, whether they are natural, adversarial, or accidental. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor of the Mat-Su Borough does hereby proclaim and pronounce September 21st as National Preparedness Month, and witness where I've set my hand and seal the Mat-Su Borough the 7th day of September 2021. And I have an announcement that the manager just handed to me. Of course, September 11th, 2021 commemorates our anniversary of 9/11. You could go to Central Mat-Su Fire Department Station 61, 5:30 a.m. We're going to place 343 flags for each firefighter lost that day. At 5:59 a.m., there's going to be a moment of silence when the first tower fell. at 6:28 a.m., there's going to be another moment of silence when the second tower fell, so we may never forget. And so 5:30 a.m. is early, but that's when the exact happening on 9/1 happened. So thank you, Mr. Manager, for letting me see that, and hope everybody goes. Okay, let's move on to, are there any changes to the minutes being presented? You got August 3rd, August 10th, and August 17th. Hearing none, the minutes are approved as presented. Reports from the cities. Mayor from Wasilla is here with us as usual. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Manager Brown, and Assembly. I'm Glenda Ledford, Mayor for the City of Wasilla. We continue to fulfill our slogan, Wasilla is open for business. We just broke ground on New Vision Credit Union at Sun Mountain today. Our roads department is busy paving streets, brushing right-of-ways, and grading gravel roads. We have completed the equestrian trail at Bumpus Ball Field for Wasilla Cross Country Team. On September 20th, 2021, the dedication ceremony for the Charters of Freedom will take place at 11 a.m. at the Armed Forces Honor Garden next to the fire station on Lucille Street. We are proud to announce that Wasilla was chosen to be one of 11 cities to hold this historic event. This is an event you don't want to miss. Do you have any questions?
Okay, looks like you're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Smolden, you're next. Welcome.
Good evening, Todd Smolden, Matsu Office of the Governor. I wanted to first apologize. I think I've missed a couple meetings, but the last one was to give my wife one last day of classroom preparation before school started. So hopefully that will earn me some points because I need a lot of them, especially for attending meetings like this at night. You know, there is an awful lot I could say. It seems like that the less that is done in Juneau, the more I could probably talk about. There is, unfortunately, it seems as if every time the legislature asks for the governor to give them a tool that they can then use to come up with a long-term plan or even a short-term PFD. There isn't a whole lot that gets done. And I think, unfortunately, it's very clear that the working relationship of members of the legislature is very strained. The governor has been working with all four caucus leadership, and I would say that he has a good relationship with them. That, you know, from what is reported back to me, that it's that the majority and minority caucuses are interested in solutions. Speaker Stutes at one point came out in favor of the governor's 50-50 POMV proposal, but when they get together in their meetings, nothing or very little seems to be done. I think the latest example, and something that I do need to speak on a little bit, is the request for a disaster declaration for the COVID spike that we have. The governor works continuously with the hospital association, continual conversations with Commissioner Crum and Dr. Zink and Heidi Hedberg, who's in charge of the vaccination rollout and other operations. And what they continually come up with is a plan for how to mitigate this spike, and it doesn't include a disaster declaration. Dr. Zink hasn't asked for one, Commissioner Crum hasn't asked for one, and the reason for that is because a disaster declaration will not reduce the number of people going to the hospital for COVID. We don't even have really a space or bed issue in the state of Alaska. We have a staffing issue in the state of Alaska. We have healthcare professionals who have been working tirelessly for about 1.5 years now. And we have, unfortunately, some healthcare professionals who who are taking extra leave and other things because quite frankly, they're burnt out. And so a disaster declaration doesn't really do anything to increase the staffing that is needed to deal with this spike. The governor did work with Commissioner Crum and Dr. Zink to put forward some legislation, and then he changed the call for the special session so that they could address that legislation. And it has a lot to do with reducing regulations and suspending regulations so that we can have an increase in staff, even potentially hire people from outside very quickly. And unfortunately, the response of the House Health and Social Services to that was they didn't hold a meeting today. So I guess I would just say we're kind of perplexed about really what the priorities are for some legislators. It seems like it's more about politics rather than actual health and safety. When you ask for some solutions and then don't hold a meeting, you take a long weekend and then you don't hold a meeting to even hear the legislation. That is, it just unfortunately just seems like politics. And that's I guess what's kind of frustrating for us is that we would really like to have some solutions. The governor has been working hard on some solutions. He's presented some solutions. He's presented a plan that has bipartisan support. He has even offered up some research on revenue possibilities and what different types of revenue options we could employ and for how much money, whether it be a sales tax or other options. And it just doesn't seem like a whole lot's being done. So I believe, and Mr. Stoltz might speak, I guess, on this, but I believe that there's about a week left in the third special session. So of course there is talk of a fourth special session because a week doesn't seem like enough time to actually solve some of these issues. So that's about all I have tonight, which I realized was quite a bit. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Questions? Looks like you're good. Thank you, Mr. Spolden.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I should back up a step, and we have a report from the school district. I don't think there's anyone here from the school district. So we'll pass on to that. We have a joint assembly school board committee on school issues. Anything, Ms. Nowers?
I would just note the September 14th is our joint assembly school board meeting.
Okay. So that's coming up real quick. So we'll. Any other public relation reports from anybody? Assembly members or staff? Okay, Mr. Brown, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief, but just wanted to mention that as part of National Preparedness Month, the 13th Annual Emergency Preparedness Expo will be held on September 25th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Menard Sports Complex in Wasilla. It's a free safety fair sponsored by the Borough, DES, AARP Alaska, the American Red Cross, the LEPC, and the City of Wasilla. So that allows the general public to interact with a wide variety of emergency preparedness, response, and recovery agencies and organizations. So the public's invited and encouraged to come out and attend 10 a.m., 3 p.m., September 25th. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'm going to back up a second, back to school issues. I just want to thank Dr. Trainey and the school district and the school board for a letter they wrote to the legislature on school bond debt after the last meeting that was sent out. And I just was very thankful to see it, and I was very impressed that they took the time to do that. So thank you very much. Mr. Spropoulos.
For the past couple of weeks, Assistant Borough Manager George Hayes and myself has talked to a couple of officials at the state, Department of Health and Human Services, plus the Attorney General's office regarding the pending opioid settlement that's coming. It's a nationwide settlement. You might have seen reports of it in the news, $26 billion settlement. It's allocated across the states after the attorneys get paid and the fees get paid. There's $22.5 billion being allocated across the states. It is a gigantic class action settlement. I'm mentioning it tonight because it looks like the states have gotten the requisite number of people to sign on to the agreement. The whole agreement only goes into place if a certain percentage of states sign on, plus a certain percentage of municipalities sign on. In Alaska, there would be 9 municipalities. We would be one of them. And so the agreement's 300 plus pages long. And to join the settlement, we would pass a resolution. So do you want me to talk a little bit more about the settlement? I can kind of walk through the numbers a little bit here. Or do you just want me to bring forward a resolution? Do we want to have an executive session?
Who is the plaintiff? Who's paying the money?
The manufacturers, principally the manufacturers of opioids. So these are the results of all the states and municipalities who have sued Purdue Pharma, things of that nature regarding opioid epidemic that swept across the United States, and all of the effects that it had on local and state governments in terms of drug overdoses, hospitals, social service programs, et cetera. Alaska's a little unique in that we're a second-class borough. We don't have general health and social service powers. The net that would come to Alaska if the settlement's approved would be $58 million over 18 years. Of that, 15% of it would come to the municipalities. So that's $8.7 million spread out over 18 years across the 9 municipalities that would need to participate. I did some thumbnail math. That would be between $55,000 and $80,000 a year if we took it directly. The first decision is whether to join the settlement. Again, it's a class action. It's kind of like when you get those postcards in the mail. If we don't join the settlement, we reserve our rights to go try to sue the opioid manufacturers ourselves. If we don't join, if we do join, then we become part of the participating settlers. We can't ever sue them. And then we have a conversation with the state and the other municipalities about how to spend the money over the next 18, 20 years, depending on how it gets doled out. The reason it's coming up now is because these deadlines got set. We started getting a couple of emails from AML about a month ago, put us in touch with the state. They want resolutions from the participating municipalities by mid-October. So my intent would be to bring one the first meeting of October, just a resolution approving settlement. Again, the settlement's online, the document's out there. It's pretty convoluted. 85% of all settlement proceeds must be spent on opioid remediation, which includes treatment, education, training for first responders, things of that nature.
Okay, so you're doing the resolution as we speak.
So yeah, exactly. So none of this is confidential. It's a class action settlement. Right. So again, just like when you get the postcard in the mail, you get online and read about it. Your question is, do you want to participate or not? So I've talked with Deputy Manager Hayes, talked to the state. I've read the settlement agreement. There is very little to no downside for the Matanuska-Susitna Borough because we have not sued the opioid manufacturers. We are unlikely to, on our own, try to sue the opioid manufacturers. And what I would do then is bring forth a resolution, very basic, saying that the manager is authorized and empowered to pursue settlement and join. The state is talking about forming a working group to talk about establishing more social service programs to deal with this and disperse the settlement throughout the state.
Okay, very interesting.
If anybody has more detailed questions, obviously in the next couple of weeks, stop by my office or give me a call. I can walk you through some of the details if you'd like, but I think I laid it all out pretty well here.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
The clerk's report is in your red folder, and also attached to that is the September 14th Joint Assembly School Board agenda. And just to clarify, that meeting's over at the School District Administration Building. And also last week, I sent the Assembly and Mayor a copy of the election brochure. I did make one change since I sent it out last Friday, and it's on page 18, and it's regarding the ballot proposition. I added information on where the public can go find the project information along with the maps. So I provided them 2 links in this regard. Does the Assembly have any other changes they would like to see made?
Any comments, any changes to the ballot info? Looks like you're good, Madam Clerk.
That is it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, agenda item F, citizens and other correspondence. Any comments on the items being presented? Hearing none, they are presented. Madam Clerk, all right, I am, please.
IM 21-180, reporting the conclusion of contract for bid number 21-125B with Capital Office Systems for the supply and install of furniture, fixtures, and equipment at Station 6-1, Phase 2, for the final contract amount of $141,765.47.
Any comments? Hearing none, the IM is presented. There are no persons to be heard. We're at public hearings. You will have 3 minutes to testify. For people who are testifying by phone, once you hear the item you want to speak to read into the record, please hit *3 and you will hear your hand has been raised. You will know it's your time to speak when you hear your line has been unmuted. Then state your name for the record and spell your last name for us, please. Madam Clerk, ordinance 21088.
An ordinance accepting and appropriating $7,590,192 in disaster supplement funds from the United States Economic Development Administration for the installation of pile sleeves on the deep draft dock and a roll-off cargo ramp at Port McKenzie, with accompanying resolution 21088, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget for the United States Economic Development Administration disaster supplement funds. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Okay, thank you. We'll do our staff report. Ms. Dolan, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Assembly members. I'm Teresa Dolan, Port Operations Manager. As the clerk has just stated, the legislation you have in front of you is to accept and appropriate the EDA grant that we were awarded for $7.6 million. That money will be used to put pile sleeves on the deep draft dock. It's a project that we've been trying to accomplish and find the funding for probably about the last 10 years.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, I'll open the public hearing at this time. Do we have a sign-up list? No sign-up list. Anybody in the audience wish to speak on this ordinance and resolution? It's a great day for the Mat-Su Borough receiving this grant money to fix our pile and sleeves. So anybody on the telephone? Okay, I'll close the public hearing at this time. Assembly Member 2, this is yours, please.
I move to adopt ordinance 21-088 and resolution 21-088.
Mr. McKee, discussion?
Yes, I move to postpone this ordinance until the first meeting in December. And I have a reason for that, a pretty good one, I think, okay?
It better be good.
We have coming up an election in which we are talking about how we are going to raise money for our road service that we're going to repair. There is some talk in some of the assembly about having an increase in fuel tax of 8 or 10 cents a gallon, okay? The state is talking about either an income tax or a sales tax, okay, that we are going to be looking at. So the idea here is that money is evidently in short supply. The other thing I would advance on this is that we have approved $200,000 for the purchasing to go out and to find a qualified international firm that will evaluate the port as to its viability as a port. And if they say it is viable, then to give us clients, to a list of clients. If it is not deemed to be viable, then this body up here will be faced with the prospect of closing the port, okay? So it's important for us to, in fact, delay this and have a real look at it. Last but not least, grants don't come without a little penalty on it, okay? This baby says we can't close the port for 15 years if we accept this grant without paying back the grant, okay? So I think we ought to kind of set this baby after the election, let the new assembly folks wrestle around with it. It's something it's for them to get their teeth into. And it is precipitous for us to accept it at this time, in my view.
Okay, so we got a motion to continue, what was it, to December?
December 7th.
Okay, Mr. Sumner.
I think we're already in that situation. If we close the port, I mean, we would owe substantial money back to the federal government already. I don't think that that's the direction that we're probably going to be heading. And that this isn't borough taxpayer money. This is federal money that we'd be receiving as a grant. So.
Okay. Ms. Dolan, is there some timelines on this that we need to know about?
Yes, Mayor, there is actually. I had to go to the EDA and ask for an extension in order for this legislation to go through. Normally, you would accept the funds within 30 days. They gave us an additional 60 days so that we could get through this legislative process for a total of 90 days, but waiting until December would go beyond that. So we would require another extension from the EDA.
Okay, Mr. Hale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 2 questions for whoever can answer them. Could someone speak to the timeline of having to keep the port open for another 15 years if we accept this money, first of all?
Mr. Manager, Ms. Dolan?
Through the mayor, if Assemblymember Hale could give me a little bit of idea what do you mean by a timeline to keep it open for an additional 15 years?
Well, the claim was just made that if we accept this money, we cannot close the port for 15 years. Is that accurate?
That is correct, as I understand from the attorney's office.
Okay, and the second question, what is the borough's matching to get this money? What are we matching?
1.9 million.
Mr. McKee?
Point I was going to make for Assemblyman Sumner. We have roughly $2 million in taxpayer money folded up in this thing, okay? So it's not just a question of that free money that, which is not free since I pay my taxes to the federal government. But in fact, we have money in this. I would speak to the money. He is correct, by the way. We have an additional $8.3 million that we owe already on this baby to the federal government. So what we could do by accept this, we are changing the amount. We're doubling it. There's something crazy about that. Instead of decreasing it, we're doubling the amount. And I am not confident that, because I have 6 years on this assembly. And I want to tell you, there's nothing been viable about that port. Its revenue has been less than $250,000 a
Let's
year.
get back to the issue of motion to continue, whether or not we should continue this to a different date. Let's get off into Ms. Nowers.
So I have 2 questions. One is just in terms of the timing of the work that would be done on this. If we were to accept this now versus December, would that make a difference in terms, when would the actual work, would you expect the actual work to take place?
Through the mayor to Assemblymember Nowers, it first has to go out for design work to be done. And then once that happens, they'll order all of the sleeves. They have to be manufactured, then shipped up here. So it's going to be at least a year before we would actually start construction.
And then Mr. McKee mentioned a 200,000 economic viability study. I know we had a marketing plan. Is there also an economic viability study in addition to that?
Mr. Manager?
Anyone clarify?
Through the mayor to Ms. Nowers, I believe that's what Mr. McKee's referring to, is that business development marketing plan. And what we decided to do when we got the IMP work back was, because of the election, we elected to wait until after the election. So before we actually put that out, so that we have the opportunity to socialize that and discuss it in a little bit more detail with the new assembly and mayor before we move forward on that.
And then one just last clarification. So if we accepted this tonight, the actual project in reality is not going to go forward for a year, et cetera. So kind of in relation to Mr. McKee's concerns, there's still a time window of this of the money being expended is not really going to be expended for quite a while. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, Mr. McKee's premise is that you're going to have two new brilliant assembly members in November, and that's the reason you'd put this off when you get two seasoned assembly members. So, is that the premise? Wasn't that the premise? Not that
Basically,
it's
it
totally
goes along.
ridiculous, but it's totally ridiculous.
No,
but-
that's what I was linking up with what the borough manager said. He is putting off until we get a new assembly to go out for a contract for someone to assess our port. This would just marry what we're going to do with what the manager is going to do with the marketing assessment.
Well, go ahead, Mr. Sumner.
So I would say, even if we were going to shut down the port, what that would look like is shutting down operations, shutting down the port department, but we would still be responsible for making sure the thing doesn't rust into the ocean. And I mean, this would help with that. So that would be a liability of ours if that occurred. And from my understanding, eventually it would. So, I mean, that's something to consider on this. You know, we would have to clean all that up, and there's not really an easy exit from this. So,
Okay, we're on the motion to postpone. So, Mr. Hale?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Specifically on the motion to postpone, I didn't quite catch what was said about the 60-day extension that was given to us. When does the assembly have to take action on this or lose the opportunity exactly?
Through the mayor to Assemblymember Hale, I'm trying to remember the exact day that we were notified of the award, and it's supposed to be 30 days from that. They gave us an additional 60 for a total of 90. It was last month, so July, August, September, the end of September is our end of 90 days.
Okay. And tell me, Ms. Dolan, how long have we been trying to repair these piles and these sleeves?
So the original design of the deep draft dock included pile sleeves, but at the time they were cost engineered out. Ever since then, I believe that the assumption was within a few years we would have enough money to put them on. That never happened. And we've basically been looking for funding ever since.
Okay. Ms. Nowers?
Just looking for clarification on that. The bulk of the money would not, there would be some design scoping work that would be done in the first year, but the major bulk of this entire project is
Well,
not going to get expended for.
Let's
a year
focus
plus.
on the motion and continue right
Well,
now. I want to dispense with this.
it does relate to my decision on that. So I mean, if I understand it right, it's 9 million total, but at least in the next year, we're not going to be expending much on that in
Go ahead,
terms of
Ms.
the
Dolan.
timeline we're looking at.
Go ahead.
Terry Dolan, Director of Public Works. Public Works will be executing the project, so our staff will be overseeing the design work that will, if the assembly accepts this, will go on almost immediately. We already have conceptual drawings, so I don't think the design will take very long, and we'll move rapidly into execution for the pile sleeves. I think it's feasible if the supply system can produce the materials in a reasonable amount of time that we do that work next summer, assuming that the assembly accepts the grant. We have seen in other projects, things like steel having long lead times. This will require American steel because it's federal money. And so it's difficult to predict whether we'll actually be able to do it next summer. The timeline without the interference of the supply system would support execution next summer.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Hale, then we're going to vote on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Specifically on the motion to postpone, I think December is too far. If we only have until the end of this month to either accept this money or lose our opportunity at it, I think December is too far. So.
I'd revise it to the next meeting if you want.
Yeah, we'll just stick with the primary amendment.
Okay.
Okay. Any objection to Mr. McKee's primary motion to continue this till December? There is objection. So Madam Clerk, let's do a vote. And please do not do this, by the way. We've been trying to get the money.
Mr. Mayor, it failed with Assemblymember McKee in support. And we do test this every day, by the way.
Okay, so we're back on record. The motion to continue has been denied. We're discussing ordinance 21088 and resolution 2108 to receive the money from the federal government in the amount of $7,590,192. Any further discussion? Any objection to passing ordinance 21088 and resolution? You objection, Mr. McKee?
No, I'm considering, and probably will consider until 4:30 tomorrow, whether I wish.
5:30.
No, 4:30. Whether I wish to do a motion for consideration.
Reconsideration.
Reconsideration, okay?
Okay. Any objection to passing ordinance 21088 in ordinance 21, resolution 2108? Seeing no objection, they both pass. Ordinance 21089 and resolution 21089 and resolution 21090.
An ordinance accepting and appropriating $301,625 from the Alaska State Department of Health and Social Services for the provision of critically needed essential health and social services with accompanying resolution 21089, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget for the Human Services Community Matching Grant Program and accompanying resolution 2190, a resolution allocating funding to nonprofit sub-grantees for the provision of critically needed essential health and social services. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Okay, thank you. Staff report, please.
Through the mayor to the assembly, Cheyenne Heindel, Finance Director. This is the second year of the Human Services Matching Grant. We provide a 30% match out of the borough budget. It's approved in the capital budget annually. So this year, the way the funding worked out, each of these organizations will receive roughly $47,975.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open the public hearing at this time. Do we have a sign-up list? No sign-up list according to the clerks. Anybody in the audience wish to speak on this ordinance and two resolutions? Are there any telephonics? Okay, I'll close the public hearing at this time. Ms. Bovee, please.
I move to adopt ordinance 21-089 and resolution 21-089 and resolution 21-090.
Discussion? Any objection to passing the legislation? Seeing and hearing none, that legislation does pass. Okay, we're at audience participation, so let's, this is your opportunity to speak to the assembly on about any topic you wish. If you're on the telephone and would like to speak under audience participation, please hit *3. You will hear your hand has been raised. Everybody has 3 minutes, so we got Brian Largent. Sutton Community Council, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I think I did that last time. I like it off. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, Assembly. I appreciate your time today. I'm here to apologize, first of all. First, for my hair. I just came off of my roof and I have paint all over. It's going to be like this till spring, so I'm sorry if it's scary to you. But secondly, and seriously, I want to apologize to the Assembly for not knowing the objections to the Public Use Area Management Plan before it got to you. I was surprised by that. I did get a late phone call from someone who wasn't interested in giving me details, so I couldn't answer any specific questions about it. But we have heard and we concur to most of the major objections that were raised in the plan. In fact, we've used suggested language by some of the protesters, and I think when you see the plan again, you will, it is different. We've kind of pared it down a little bit. We've tried to make it a little clearer, a little more concise, but I think it will be a good plan, and I'll talk about that specifically admit. But I do want to thank Assemblyman Hale for babysitting the plan in this process. It, you know, it was, we originally tried to get things done pretty quickly, make some minor changes, but as we started going through, we said, well, let's just take our time, make a document that is better than the one we have, and go with that. So I appreciate your effort in that. I do want to thank all those actively working on the committee. They have selflessly served and worked. I don't know why, but I sure appreciate it, and they've done a good job. And I want to thank Joe Metzger and Eric Phillips and Jill Ursick for the work they've done on it, and all the people working on maps. So it's a cleaner, better looking document. And lastly, I want to encourage everyone in the world, well, maybe just in the borough or Anchorage or Eagle River, but to look at the document. It should be available soon. I'm not going to give a date, but Sutton Community Council expects to look at it at our next meeting, the end of this month. And so that should start us back into the process of getting it to you through the appropriate panels and committees. But I want everybody who cares about Jonesville to look at it. And then I want them to let me know personally. I'll give you my phone number, my email, my address, any way you can or they can get their concerns to me personally, so that we don't have a repeat of what happened last time. And I do thank you for your time, and I think that as we go forward, will be a real springboard for making changes. And just one more statement, if I can. I think it's most important that when this document is approved by the Assembly, there is no legislation that comes into play. That is all a different process. We do make recommendations for legislation, and we like the recommendations we've made, but that's a whole nother process. So let's not throw out a document that will do good things because there's a few things in there maybe we won't agree with, because that certainly will be the case for some. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Donna DeFusco.
Good evening. My name is Donna Cowart DeFusco, and I'm still concerned about the unnecessary $760,000 Burma Road underpass project currently being built on my private property. There seems to be a public perception that because we lost in court, that somehow the courts created a legal public travel corridor, an RS 2477 from Connect to Susitna station. That is false. Alaska property owners and the public need to know how the state staff and attorneys explained how an RS 2477 becomes a legal entity. Superior Court testimony from January 21st, 2016. This is the attorney asking questions to the state staff. Question: if a route was codified, did that mean that it legally was an RS 2477 right-of-way or that it was a valid right-of-way? The answer was no. The question: okay, why not? Answer: because the legislature doesn't have that power. Question: okay, what's your understanding of how that works or where that law is? State's answer: so that would be in the acceptance of the grant from the federal government, which would have been long before 1999. And so the state can research that and look at it and say, we think all the facts line up. But at the end of the day, the court is the arbitrator of whether that's a legal 2477 or not. So neither the legislature nor the state can make a 2477 legal. Private property owners cannot just give or will a 2477. Basically, it doesn't matter what's on plats, title documents, surveys, or patents, because only the court can order a legal 2477. The Supreme Court further said, quote, Dixon and DeFusco's case did not answer or purport to answer any factual or legal questions applicable for overarching RS 2477 issues, but rather only the presence of a 2477 on the plot of land in question. We learned that RS 2477s have to be won in court on every contiguous piece of property for the entire route. So where are the court orders on all of the properties that would make a legal 2477 from Connect to Susitna? Where are the court orders on the neighbors to the east and the west of our property. Show me those court orders. To my knowledge, there's only one court order for 1/2 mile of approximately 30 miles, and it is now has a newly cut trail with an unnecessary underpass to nowhere under construction because the public has no other legal access beyond our property. The court didn't do us any favors, but they didn't do any favors to the public either. No court orders, no legal access. Thank you.
Robin Bjork.
Hi, I'm Robin Bjork from Palmer, and I've never done anything like this before, so I'm a little nervous. It's on my comfort zone. I'm a medical specialist. I've been a specialist since 1994. I did bring a few examples of some of my work because you don't know me from Adam. Here's some textbooks that I've written chapters in, publications that have been published and used internationally in the medical field in my specialty area. I speak all over the world and have trained medical professionals both nationally and internationally. I'm not doing that anymore because of the problems that we are facing right now. Importantly, COVID-19 and what we're into now is literally a medical tyranny, and I'm really concerned about it. But I do have good news for you. This booklet that I'm giving you is just one example of things that have already been out and developed by top medical professionals in our nation. And this one was published by the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. It's just one of many. And then there's also, you'll see the complete guide to COVID-19 prevention and treatment. And that includes 538 citations from professional medical journals of published science. And this is available to us right now. It is a way for our valley to stay open, to stay free. We could develop an organic vaccination program because it involves taking care of yourself, being healthy, vitamin C, vitamin D, quercetin, zinc, and then multimodal, multi-drug interventions that are home-based. Okay, this is before you go to the hospital. The problem we're having right now, why people are dying, is because they're told that nothing can be done. This stuff is super effective if implemented it immediately when you have symptoms, in particular because with this COVID-19 Delta variant. This applies whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated. It is hope for our valley. I'm willing to help in any way because I have cleared my plate from all of my other obligations, all my professional organizations, and my clinical work to help work on this problem. So I'm offering my services, I'm offering information. The problem is that all of this not only has been neglected by the CDC, it's been obstructed. That is the truth. It's been obstructed by Dr. Anthony Fauci. He has literally committed crimes against humanity, and we need to call that on the carpet and do what we know we can do to help ourselves and be free and keep our economy open here in the Valley.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any telephonics for, okay, we do have a caller, so go ahead, please, on the telephone.
Good evening. This is Kelly Dixon, D-I-C-K-S-O-N. At the last meeting, the facts shared about a previous speaker who was in support of the Burma Road underpass were referred to as filthy. They were and will always be facts about cruelty to dogs, as reported by the Matsu Valley Frontiersman and the Anchorage Daily News. The facts are verifiable through judicial records. Your Burma Road underpass is not on the Iditarod Trail. The map in Lorraine Fortner Welch's book, Big Lake, Alaska Beginnings, shows the Iditarod Trail crossing at Steppen Lake. That matches the same trail location as shown on the Alaska Road Commission map of Mount McKinley District, 1951 to 57, which is held in the University of Alaska Fairbanks RS-2477 project collection. The state has no federal map void of public influence, which shows the Iditarod Trail on my property. The 1912 realignment of the 1908 Big Lake route crossed north of my property at Steppen Lake as mapped. Your underpass is contributing to the false narrative about the location of the Iditarod Trail and making innocent private property owners suffer. The men of the Alaska Road Commission risked their lives so you could be sitting in your warm chairs this evening. Misrepresenting Alaska's history for private gain is shameful and heinous. Your Burma Road underpass is based on false claims and not Alaska's true history. Thank you.
Any more telephonics? Anybody else in the audience wish to speak? Ma'am, come on forward, please.
Thank you. My name is Jackie Ivy Goforth, and I have a few things to speak about for the shot that is now being called a vaccine. Did you know that the largest group of vaccine hesitant individuals is the PhDs? The PhDs are the largest group that are not taking the vaccine. And if you listen to Dr. Christina Parks when she spoke in front of the Senate House, I think it was the House, Michigan House 2 weeks ago, she's a PhD. She said the reason the PhDs are so vaccine hesitant is because they know the science. She also said the second group of the most vaccine hesitant are the high school educated or below. And her reason for that was they know that they don't know and they don't trust their government. Now, you may not have heard another PhD speak. His name is Dr. Sean Brooks. He spoke in front of the Ohio School Board about the vaccines. And I would suggest that before anybody in this state, borough, city, anywhere decides to mandate a vaccine, they need to see if what Dr. Brooks says is true or not. And he talks about a D-dimer test. And so I brought it so that because I don't speak very eloquently sometimes, and I'd like to let him take up the rest of my time. Thank you.
Try to donate. Brother, disappointed. My name's Dr. Sean Brooks, PhD, Oxford. I have 48 publications, including 23 books. I've studied health, medicine, anatomy, and physiology for approximately 21 years. Dr. Robert Malone, who created the messenger RNA vaccine, has said no one should ever take these jabs ever, under any circumstance whatsoever. He created it, and he says don't ever do it. So let me explain what's going to happen to the people who have taken it. Excuse me. The people who have taken it are going to die in the next 6 months to 3 to 5 years for 3 reasons. Number one, you have dramatically decreased your own immune system by 35%. The first jab did it by at least 15. The second did it by 35 now. If you take any booster shot, you will die. That's it. You take a flu shot in the future, you will die. The second reason, antibody-dependent enhancement. Antibody-dependent enhancement is what is happening with these jabs with everybody who has taken them. Unless, of course, you've taken a placebo, but there's no way that you would know that. So given that fact, antibody-dependent enhancement tricks the entire body into believing that the cell that's eating the pathogen is eating it when it isn't. It ends up leading to what's called a cytokine storm, which causes organ failure. That will cause your death, and there's no stopping that. No amount of drugs will stop that.
Ma'am?
The third thing, blood clotting.
Your 3 minutes is up.
Everyone who has taken...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Okay, so we'll close audience participation at this time. We're going to go to the consent agenda just for the, Mr. Sumner has to pull an item because of a conflict. Why don't you do that now, Mr. Sumner?
Sorry, I apologize, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull AM 21-092.
Okay. 092. Okay, Madam Clerk, please read the rest of the consent agenda, the ones that are not pulled.
Resolution 21093, a resolution supporting the Curry Ridge Riders application for a recreational trails program grant through the Alaska Department of Natural Resources. AM 21081, request to vacate the existing 60-foot radius cul-de-sac on North Sun Valley Drive created by Margaret Subdivision, plat number 2020-83, to be replaced by a 60-foot wide radius cul-de-sac approximately 100 feet to the north to provide frontage for new lots created by Base Camp Subdivision located within Section 35, Township 19 North, Range 1 East Seward Meridian, lying east of North Palmer Fishhook Road and directly north of North Sun Valley Drive. And also AM 21082, approval of election officials for the November 2nd, 2021 regular borough election. AM 21084, authorizing the borough manager to enter into an agreement with the Federal Emergency Management Agency regarding the use of inoperable systems and the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System Open Platform for Emergency Networks. AM 21085, awarded bid number 22022B to Western Construction and Equipment, LLC, in the contract amount of $114,370 for Hidden Hills Road repairs. AM 21086, awarded bid number 22020B to Northern Gravel and Trucking, LLC, in the contract amount of $642,772 to purchase winter sand and chips. AM 21088, acceptance of late filed and retroactive senior citizen and disabled veteran exemption applications. AM 21089, approval of a contract amendment to 21168B with the Alaska Diversified Contractors, LLC, to extend the project completion time to construct the Cell 4 gas collection system project to October 15th, 2021. AM 21091, approval of contract amendment to proposal number 2107P with Michael Baker International Incorporated, extending the project completion to September 30th, 2022 to design Point McKenzie Rail Extension Bridge repairs project. And that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Senator Bovee, could you move that part of the consent agenda, please?
I move to approve the consent agenda as read into the record by the clerk.
Any objection? Hearing no objection, that part of the consent agenda is approved. Now let's go to the items pulled, Madam Clerk.
The first one is Resolution 21091, a resolution approving a change order, change to the fiscal year 2022 schedule of rates and fees for Central Landfill and the transfer sites to add a special level pickup truck rate of $10. It was pulled by Assemblymember Bovee.
Madam Bovee, could you move that for us, please?
I move to approve Resolution 21-091.
Okay. Did Mr. Two leave us, or what happened here? Okay. So let's do a discussion of Resolution 21091. I think this is something you're interested in. For Central Landfill rates, you're making a change. Why don't you tell us about it, please? And Mr. Dolan's here with us too.
Okay, so I tried something before, and when I talked to the borough staff, what they did is they tried to take every load that came in through the landfill and give it a deduction. That wasn't my intent. My intent was if you brought a pickup in there, you could get a pickup load of trash dropped off for $10. So if you brought your dump truck in there and it had 10 yards, you don't give them a discount on the first 2 yards. You charge them the 10 yards. That's how they came up last time. So I looked at the numbers and I said, what I'd like to do is have just a special. You bring your truck in, it's $10. We're not gonna do all this fancy math. It's not happening. So that's what I'm trying to pass today, is to allow the citizens to come in, pay $10 to dump their pickup load of trash, flat rate.
Pickup truckload, $10, right?
$10.
Okay, Ms. Snowers.
Yeah, thank you to the mayor. I had a couple issues with this. I did take a look at it. One of my issues is that this actually takes a system for assessing a charge and makes it more confusing. Now the person at the gate has to determine what a level truckload is instead of being able to measure it by cubic yard. If there's a debate, you've got different size trucks. It doesn't apply to cars. So it's not simplifying things at the gate. My other issue, which is kind of broader, with the landfill is it's an enterprise fund. So if we don't collect these funds, they got to come out somewhere. Right now, these users are paying that. So if we're losing 1 million, 1.3 million, somebody else is going to have to pay that. That's going to be me, a future user. Is that going to be me, a property taxpayer? So if we're going to bring forward something to reduce the amount of funding that the landfill has, I think we also need to say where that funding is going, who's going to pay it. Because I like users paying as much as possible. So I can't support this as it's put together.
Mr. Hale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the one thing that I see with this that is really gonna mess things up as far as I'm concerned is I have had a problem at the transfer sites with the cubic yard designation. Arguments over, is this 2 cubic yards or is this 3 cubic yards or is this, whatever. And with this level pickup truck load, I just see more problems like that happening. Because then, it's very ambiguous, right? Like it's a little over the top, depending on who's the guy at the gate that day. He's going to charge you 3 cubic yards instead of the $10 rate. Or maybe if it's a different person at the gate that day, they're going to charge you $10, even though it's quite a bit over the top. And I don't want to add that kind of ambiguity to the process. The main problem that I have with the process right now is the arguing over what constitutes a cubic yard. Honestly, for me, if we could put scales at all of the transfer stations, that would be the best option, but we can't afford that. And so I just don't see this simplifying things. I see it leading to more conflicts between borough personnel and the person who's trying to dump their trash. And so I do have a problem with this.
Mr. Two.
Oh, my mic's still on. Well, that is another thing that this will do, is it will simplify things. And that is the problem, and it's been a problem for years, that you'll bring your pickup in there, it's $15, then it's $40, then it's $30. And so they don't really have a handle on it, and it's kind of like you discussed already. So to say a pickup comes in at $10, it's a level load, I think everybody knows what a level load is. And I'm trying to simplify it and at the same time give the citizens a break on getting rid of the trash. So that's why I thought of this plan. So I think it's a good thing, and I hope that you guys will help me and get this to go. I think it's at the very least try it for a year, and if you guys think that it costs too much, then change it. But at least try it.
Okay. Mr. Manager, Mr. Dolan, what is the borough's, what's your take on this? Flat pickup load, it kind of appeals to me in a way.
Terry Dolan, Director of Public Works. The assembly members that spoke earlier really hit all of the key points. We assessed with fairly high confidence this will cost us about 1.3 million in revenue. I do agree with Assemblywoman Nowers and with Mr. Hale that the way this is written is vague and difficult to enforce. The language in there that says if it's a little bit over, it's okay, but there's no definition of a little bit over. It also says if it sticks out of the bed a little bit, that's okay. But how much a little bit is falls under this rate, or how much a little bit more than that doesn't, is unclear. And the dollar difference between those two things is between 2 yards, which would go in at $10, and 3 yards at $51. It's a $41 difference that we would be arguing over at the gates, which I agree with Mr. Hale. It sets up conflict that there really isn't any need to do. We should never be passing legislation that encourages conflict between staff and residents. So I think that's a major drawback of this. The revenue is a major drawback as well. We're operating on an operating basis, revenue neutral, but when you look at the capital costs of operating a landfill, we're borrowing on average about $2 million a year. So we're already taking waste at a cost below what it actually costs us to dispose of it. This would make that significantly worse, and it would cause me to have to borrow in the range of around $3 million a year and continue to increase the debt of the enterprise fund. So we certainly can do that if the assembly wants. I don't recommend it.
Other discussions? Ms. Nowers?
I would just note the idea that people would agree on what a level pickup trailer load when money comes into play may not be like everybody knows what a level pickup truck load is. With the cubic yard, you can at least pull out a measuring tape and you've got some objectivity. I have a small pickup truck, so I would pay more with the same size load as somebody who's got a big pickup truck just because it's level. Doesn't seem like it makes it any more fair. And then again, with all these, if we want to have a discussion about the landfill and, we think it's bringing in too much, let's take a look at the budget and look at spreading the savings across the board, not just, we're going to just do it at transfer stations. So again, I can't support this because of those issues, but if you want to have a discussion where you can, find some savings that you think we need to have, and we're looking at the budget and where that funding is going to come from. But I can't support something that says these users are going to pay less and maybe who else is going to pick up the tab. So.
Am I going to qualify, Mr. Dolan? I don't have a pickup, but I've got a 8x10 snow machine trailer with 1-foot sideboards. Can I get
Mr. Mayor,
this
the
done?
way this is written, you would not
No.
qualify.
Well, that's not
Nor
true.
would you if you took your Subaru.
That's not fair. Okay. You handle that one.
Level pickup load, it's $10. That's that simple.
Okay. So I got to buy a pickup to get a $10 rate. Okay. That is. Who was up next? Mr. Hale?
Just a couple words. Scales at the transfer stations.
I can certainly put that in the capital request for next fiscal year.
Mr. McKee?
Well, we could settle your problem by taking up a collection and buying, and Terry can go ahead and take a pickup bed and put it on your snow machine trailer. That'd take care of it for you.
I'm liking this.
Okay?
That's a good idea.
The other thing is, I'm listening to everybody here. Are we dealing with a bunch of idiots? I can look at a pickup and I can tell if it's a level or not. What the hell are we gonna do? Have somebody out there with a ruler on it or something? Give me a break. I said, beam me up, Scotty, before, and I really mean it this time.
Okay. Mr. Hale. And then
I'd just like to point out that that's not the way that the ordinance is written or the resolution is written. There is a vague and ambiguous language in the ordinance that says if it's a little over the top or a little past the end. So we're not talking about a level pickup truck load here.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Wait a minute. What are we voting on
We're
then?
going to vote on Resolution 21091, which would be Mr. Two's change to add a $10 pickup flat.
And
pickup.
what does that mean? Now, I'm listening to everybody. They just changed it. Is it a level pickup load?
No,
Is it 2
nothing's been
inches above,
changed.
hanging over the end?
There was
What?
there was never a motion. Nothing's been changed. Is any objection to passing Resolution 21091 as it's written right in front of us? There is objection. So, Madam Clerk.
We're going to look over here. Mr. Mayor, it is a tie vote, and if you wouldn't mind me getting this down with Assemblymember Sumner, Assemblymember Two, and Assemblymember McKee in support, and then Assemblymembers Hale, Nowers, and Bovee opposed.
Where's the Senator Yacht when you need him? He skipped his meeting? Oh.
You're on.
I'm going to vote no.
Okay, it has failed with the mayor voting no, Mr. Mayor.
What's next, Madam Clerk?
Resolution 21095, a resolution authorizing submittal of a State of Alaska redistricting plan to the Alaska State Redistricting Board.
Who pulled this?
I did. Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
Mr. Manager pulled it, so we'll do our staff report, then we'll have Ms. Bovee move it. Ms. Bovee, go ahead and move it now. I guess that's standard procedure.
I move to approve Resolution 21-095.
Okay, staff report.
Mayor Halter, Assembly members, I'm Pamela Graham, Grants Coordinator. When I hired on at the borough in 2001, one of the first tasks I worked on was redistricting and reapportionment. I've worked on both of them over the last 20 years, and I'm now starting my third one. Lucky me. Let's see if I can figure this out. You just pointed out the buttons advance. The process of state redistricting and assembly reapportionment began after the U.S. Census officially provides the redistricting files to the state. Typically, this occurs in March of the year following the U.S. Census. This year, it was delayed due to the pandemic. So instead of getting it in March, we received it in August. It's too close. The State Redistricting Board has began their work. They got their data August 12th, and over the 23rd and 24th of August, they met and established a timeline. They're asking for third-party plans to be submitted by the 17th. They intend to have a draft plan submitted. They will adopt it by September 11th, which is Saturday. They're meeting every day this week. They're quite boring meetings, if you ask me. They plan on adopting their draft plan and then reviewing any submitted plans the following week and then adopting additional ones if needed. The assembly reapportionment schedule will kick off per borough code immediately following the adoption of the state final plan. So we'll start drawing your lines. We'll declare the borough malapportioned sometime within 2 months following the state's final plan adoption, and then we'll proceed from there. The state constitution has some requirements that each district be contiguous, compact, have socioeconomic integration, and an equality of population. Requires that there be a drawing of 40 house districts, which we all have and know. Each of the 40 house districts must be as close to the target population of 18,355 people as possible and may not have a total deviation from more than 10%. Of the 40 districts, the borough gets roughly 5.84. It's kind of hard to see that table, but the growth in the Mat-Su has been fairly consistent over the last 30 years, and it's expected to grow. So our total population from the 2020 census puts it at 107,081 people, which is a little lower than I anticipated, but still pretty good, which, like I said, gives us about 5.84 house seats. The 2013 plan gave the Mat-Su Borough four full districts and 2 shared districts. Sutton was paired with Valdez and Delta, while Butte was paired with Peters Creek. These pairings are not acceptable for the new plan. Sutton is not socioeconomically integrated with Valdez or Delta, and based on the lack of that integration, the Delta area residents have specifically requested they not be paired with Mat-Su. They want to be paired with Fairbanks because that's where they shop. The Denali Borough has requested that they be paired with Mat-Su because they are socioeconomically integrated with Talkeetna. The continued growth of the borough means our core area is shifting. With Connect Fairview now exceeding the combined population of all 3 cities, the representation needs to shift as well. This will apply to state redistricting and borough reapportionment. That just kind of shows each of the community councils or census designated places, and the bigger the arrow, the faster the growth or the higher the growth that they occurred. So staff is proposing a plan to be submitted to the State Redistricting Board that allocates 6 districts to Mat-Su. By partnering with the Denali Borough to the north and a little east towards Glen Allen, the borough will have 6 dedicated House seats and 3 Senate seats. So we're looking at criteria that plans for the continued future growth of the borough, that we have a plan designed with those 6 House districts that include an Eastern Mat-Su district, a Goose Bay Big Lake district, a Houston Northwest district, Wasilla district, Palmer district, and a core district. And that we partner with Denali on the north per their request and take in an area east towards Glen Allen. This table shows, it's a little hard to read, but it shows the deviation if we design a plan that fits that for the borough. It's just one draft of a possible way that we could include Denali Borough. And if we advance, you can see on these maps what potential areas it would be.
Hold, just a second. Do you have a question, Mr.
I was
Cummings?
just curious what the total deviation would be. I didn't see that you totaled it up anywhere. It had it by district, but not overall deviation.
The total overall deviation, I don't know that I wrote that down. I am so sorry. And I missed that piece. I apologize. Steve, do you happen to remember? Did you hear that? 0.6, 0.8? 0.6 to 0.8% deviation total. So when designing a statewide map, it's required to understand the population overall for the entire state. So the Anchorage municipality would be entitled to 15.88 House seats. The borough, of course, is the 5.84. Fairbanks North Star is entitled to 5.21. The Southeast Alaska, 3.94. Kenai Peninsula Borough, 3.20. North Slope, 1.027. Kodiak, 0.715. So the other locations around the state are under 1 seat per area. Sorry. Since both the Anchorage municipality and the borough need extra population for their large fractional seats, the shared Knik River Bridge district is not justified in the 2021 redistricting map. The Anchorage municipality has a shared seat with either the borough or Kenai in the past. So our proposed plan will pair them with Kenai. So at this time, we're asking that you do an amendment to the resolution, directing the manager to work with staff on developing a plan and then presenting it to the board.
Okay. And we're
Are
to
there
send a
any
letter
questions?
to, the mayor's to send a letter to the state redistricting board, clearly stating Assembly's desire to partner with Denali Borough.
If you'd like to.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Nowers?
Just had one question on the map that's showing the population increases and decreases. That's calculated by census designated places, but the last time I looked, that area to the south of the city of Palmer, there's a large swath that is not in a CDP. Is that in your balance?
So that is the area that we've designated as the Greater Palmer Community Council boundary, and the Census Bureau determined that that was not eligible to be a CDP this go around. We requested it. It's on our list to request next time, and we'll push a little harder for it. But since there is not a Greater Palmer post office and an actual group formed as the council, they wouldn't accept it as a CDP.
So when you're making your calculations for balancing population, are you including that? So in that list of populations, at the very bottom, it says balance. And you've got,
So that piece is included in that. So the balance is every area that is outside of a CDP in the Mat-Su Borough.
and so maybe this is getting kind of technical, but so for that area, when you're putting those districts together, so that greater Palmer area, how are you allocating? Are you allocating all that? It's almost 5,000 in that balance. Is that going into just this area when you're calculating, or are you, if you understand the question I'm asking?
I do understand, and at this point, I haven't ran the calculations to see whether the greater Palmer area, how much of it is included in there. I took strictly what was in the CDP and based on the census tracts and blocks.
Okay, but the census level data will allow
The
you
census
to
level data.
geographically place those people.
That's correct. It goes down to the census block level.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, thank you for the staff report. Appreciate that. Now, I see there's a written motion. Is that coming for us?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that amendment would be to the resolution as it's published in the packet. The idea was, instead of asking the assembly to approve a map with lines, obviously we recognize there's going to have to be some flexibility in the lines, but what we would rather ask the assembly to do is approve a general concept with criteria that would allow us to develop a plan around that. Now, Ms. Graham laid that plan out for you so that you can see generally what we're proposing with the boundaries and what it would actually look like when it's mapped. But there may need to be some adjustments to that as we move forward. But generally speaking, we wanted to have the assembly adopt criteria for us to use in the development of a plan to kind of create boundaries, if you will, or for us as we move forward with that. So we figured that would be an easier approach than trying to literally maneuver lines on a map real time here tonight.
On the written motion, Ms. Bovee to move that? Is that the intent, Mr. Manager? Okay, Ms. Bovee, do you have it?
Did you know this one instead of the one, that one? This one makes more sense and shorter.
Thank you. I move to amend Resolution 21-095 by striking the now therefore be it resolved clause and the be it further resolved clause and insert the following in its place. Now therefore be it resolved that the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Assembly hereby directs the borough manager to develop and present a state redistricting plan that allocates the borough's 6 House districts with 3 Senate districts. This may require partnering with Denali Borough to minimize districts that cross other borough boundaries and accommodates the future growth of the borough to the greatest extent possible.
Okay. So we have that motion before the assembly. Discussion? Any objection to passing the motion as presented? Seeing no objection, that motion passes. Further discussion on the resolution itself after being amended? Any objection to passing the resolution 21095 as it just amended? Seeing no objection, excuse me, Mr. Sumner?
Mr. Mayor, I just had a question real quick. Will we be recommending Senate splits as well, or just the House district maps?
Through the mayor to Mr. Sumner, we'll be making a recommendation on the House districts, but obviously the Senate pairing typically would follow that. And obviously our play would be to have 3 senators fully established in the Mat-Su Borough. But what we're going to be carving up is House districts.
And then just really quick, it's my understanding that the map that we present to the State Redistricting Board will at least be substantially similar to the one that we've seen, with maybe a few small changes and not radically different though, right?
Through the mayor to Mr. Sumner, that's correct. That's the intent. And that's why we wanted to show you what it would look like, but we didn't want to try to get into this deal where we're trying to literally redraw lines on the fly. That would probably lead to errors in calculations and not provide us a great plan. So what you saw in the presentation tonight with the 6 districts aligned the way they are is generally what we would expect for our third-party plan. And we focused in on the Mat-Su Borough, but obviously as part of that, we have to submit a state plan. So As those lines are drawn, we'll see how the rest of those are drawn across the state as part of our third-party plan that will be submitted to the State Redistricting Board.
Okay, I think the interesting thing, you look at the census numbers over that 10-year period, the 2020, is the state grew 23,000 and the Matsu Borough grew just about 19,000. Just absolutely amazing, so. Okay, any objection to passing the resolution as amended? Seeing and hearing no objection, that resolution passes. What's next, Madam Clerk?
Resolution 21096, a resolution ratifying the 2022-2024 proposed labor agreement with the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Employees Association and authorizing the manager to sign and execute said agreement. It was pulled by Assemblymember McKee.
Okay, Mr. McKee, go ahead and mic up and make a motion on that, and then we'll discuss it.
I move to adopt the resolution as read by the Borough Clerk, and I'd like to speak to it.
Go ahead, please.
I'm in opposition to this for one particular reason. And it goes back to what I said before. We're getting ready to stick it to the community out there with more fuel tax, sales tax, all that kind of thing. And we're going to put in a 3-year agreement. You wouldn't buy a pickup if you were out of work on it. But somehow, and with a 7-year payment plan or a 3-year payment plan, if you were unemployed. But here we are sitting up here, obligating the community for 3 years to a specific amount of money. That's one. To the other, the last meeting, we set the school district contribution at 6.3%. I might add over my objection, the only objection to it. And that was after the borough manager had said that accepting it, by setting it at 6.3, we were shorting him on the budget in the future. None of this makes any sense to me. I wouldn't do anything I couldn't pay for in a year that I didn't know where the money was coming from. Yet here we are going to poke it to the community out there.
Okay, further discussion on 21096. Mr. Hale.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just 2 questions. The administration's happy with this agreement?
Through the mayor to Mr. Hale, yes, sir.
And the Employees Association has ratified the agreement?
Through the mayor to Mr. Hale, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, obviously there's objection to resolution 21096, so we'll go ahead and vote on it. Please.
Mr. Mayor, it passed with Assemblymember 2 and McKee opposed.
Okay. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Finish writing that down. No, I just had to finish writing down the vote, Mr. Mayor. AM 21090, approval of change order number 5 to contract number 20-053P with the Alaska Quality Builders in the amount of $30,454.78 to change the scope of work to allow design and construction of Americans with Disabilities Act compliant restroom facilities and add Alaska State Historic Preservation Grant funds, and that was pulled by Assemblymember McKee.
Okay, Mr. McKee, mic up and move that, please.
I move to adopt the resolution as, the AM as read into the record by the Borough Clerk. And I would like the Public Works Director, since he's right there, to tell us what this is all about.
Okay, Mr. Dolan.
Terry Dolan, Director of Public Works. The State of Alaska Historic Preservation folks gave us a grant to do additional work in this facility. The Assembly accepted that grant in July, and we intend to use it to install these restrooms.
What facility are you referring to?
This is the Willow Log Cabin. That's a portion of the community center up there.
The one we should have burned down?
Is that a question?
No, I'm trying to identify the building. That's been my position all along on it, okay? the idea, so I thought is this the 30,000, what we talked about the last meeting? Or is this an additional 30,000?
This is the same 30,000 that we talked about last time. It's federal operating monies. It has to be expended by the 30th of September, which is the end of the fiscal year for the federal government.
Thank you.
Is this historical money coming in?
Yes, sir, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor, it is.
So this was discussed. This finishes, those bathrooms were going to be left unfinished. This finishes them with the new money. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hale?
We already talked about this, right?
We're talking about it again.
I had to come back to the Assembly for change order authority. We talked about it on the accept and appropriate the grant, but I had to come back for change order authority.
Okay, anybody else? Any objection to passing this, Mr. McKee? Yes. Okay, Mr. McKee objects, so go ahead and vote, please.
Mr. Mayor, it passed with Assembly Member 2 and McKee opposed.
Okay, next one, Madam Clerk.
AM 21092, request approval of a contract amendment to contract number 21001B with North Star Excavation and Asphalt Incorporated to extend the final completion date for landfill gas collection and control system construction. Mr. Mayor, this was pulled by Assembly Member Sumner.
Okay, Mr. Sumner, move it and go ahead and discuss it.
Well, yeah,
Conflict. Okay, what's your conflict?
I do substantial business with North Star Excavation and Asphalt.
Okay, that's a good conflict. Why don't you step out and we'll call you in a second. Ms. Bovee, could you move this for us, please?
I move to approve AM 21-092.
Okay, any objection to passing this? Mr. Sumner's conflict was the only issue. Seeing no objection, that AM passes. Can somebody get Mr. Sumner, please? No unfinished business, no vetoes. Madam Clerk, introductions.
Introduction for public hearing on September 21st, ordinance 21090, ordinance 21091, ordinance 21093 with accompanying resolution 21092, ordinance 21094 with accompanying resolution 21094, and ordinance 21098.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Ms. Bovee.
I move to introduce the legislation as read into the record by the clerk and set the public hearings for September 21, 2021.
Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that legislation is introduced. Vacancy report, Ms. Bovee.
I move to approve the mayor's recommendations as follows. Borough Area Schools Site Selection Committee, Daniel Bowen. Commission on Salaries and Emoluments, resignation of Matthew Beck. Parks, Recreation, and Trails Advisory Board, James Jones. Transportation Advisory Board, resignation of Lakita Mylewski.
Okay. Any objection to passing the vacancy report? Seeing and hearing none, that vacancy report is approved. No other new business, no referrals, there are no reconsiderations, so we're at comment time. Let's start with Mr. Hale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to go back to the landfill fees one more time here. I definitely support reducing the fees for folks who use the landfills and especially folks who use the transfer sites. I just thought that was the wrong way to go about it. Been very, very busy this summer with work, and I haven't been able to sit down with the staff and kind of hash over some of my ideas for reducing those costs for our taxpayers. But I do fully intend on doing that here as the construction season kind of starts to slow down. So I appreciate the spirit in which the resolution was offered. But having had issues at the transfer sites before with arguments over the size of loads, I just couldn't support that particular resolution. So that's all I have.
Ms. Nowers.
Thank you. Just also on the landfill, I would note District 2 primarily uses the landfill itself. So if we're going to be looking at cost savings, I'd like to spread the wealth across the board and benefit all the districts. Just want to note on that Purdue, not Purdue, opioid settlement. Purdue is one of the settlement folks. There was a AML meeting. One of the things that the state talked about was, even though it's spread over 18 years, is creating some kind of endowment with it so that we have a long-term, system in place for perpetuity for treating issues like this, and trying to fix it. So I just know that's part of the discussion that might come up before us. At our school board assembly meeting, I know we have a packed agenda. I would really like to focus a little bit of time on healthcare and healthcare pricing transparency. There was a federal law that got passed that the hospitals have to disclose how much they're charging. But if you have tried to use those, which I did spend some time on the Matsu Regional Medical Center and Providence, comparing prices, it's still just impossible to know what you're going to pay. So just for example, shoulder surgery under Blue Cross at Matsu Regional was listed at $47,000, with Blue Cross at Providence was listed at $68,000. But then there's a discount. So you're paying $4,000 at Providence, but you don't know how much you're paying at Matsu Regional because they don't disclose it. So just kind of wanted to put that in people's minds. I think healthcare is eating our lunch as far as costs, and something we can all agree on needs to be fixed, and the consumer needs to be able to know what they're going to pay so they can make good choices, and we can all stop paying so much. And then just wanted to really thank staff for the census updates, and I hope I just hope we can get kind of an updated map as we get more data from the census so we can actually look at how our population is changing across the board. I think that could be really useful. So thank you very much.
Hey, Mr. Sumner, comments?
So I've been getting a lot of emails lately asking us not to impose vaccine mandates or lockdowns or that sort of thing. I just like to say that the Matsu Borough has no ability to force anybody to take vaccines or we really couldn't implement any of the mandates. All the mandates that were implemented by the state. None were implemented by the Matsu Borough. We don't have health powers or police powers. It's not something that we can do or ever will do. So, thank you.
Okay, I think I forgot staff reports. Mr. Spropoulos. Nothing
report.
exciting in the legal world?
Yeah, lots of exciting things. Very interesting case developments around the nation.
Okay.
Could bore you to death for hours.
Okay, well, in that case, Mr. Manager.
Nothing to add, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Clerk?
I did want to mention, since we talked about state redistricting tonight, because we're going to have assembly reapportionment happening. And I know I talked to you guys about this at the meeting that we spoke to assembly priorities. However, I wanted to also remind you how state redrawing of House district lines, then they draw their precinct lines. The State of Alaska Division of Elections then takes those state district lines and draws their precincts. It sounds like they're going to start doing that almost right when the plan is adopted. They're not even going to wait for any kind of lawsuits that always tend to happen. And it affects us when we're redrawing our precinct or our assembly district lines for reapportionment. So I'm going to do my best to work with the state again this year. They allowed me to work with them 10 years ago when this happened, because what we're trying to avoid is any kind of precinct lines splitting assembly districts, meaning we have multiple ballots at one precinct, which we try to avoid any kind of confusion like that. And it works out a lot better when you only have one ballot style, because it's a whole heck of a lot less mistakes that can occur. So I want to keep you guys in the loop. That looks like we'll be drawing the lines sooner rather than later. Hopefully the state will let us work with them. More than likely, I'm going to be requesting a special election, maybe in April or May, to get those, because our reapportionment has to go to the voters. And I'd prefer that our precinct or our assembly district boundaries get ratified prior to our next election with the state, and that's in 2022. Because I don't want to have state election happening and then borough election officials with 2, maybe 3 ballots at one precinct. So I'm going to do our best to get that finalized.
Okay, Mr. Tu, comments?
The landfill went from a $3 million a year intake to a $9 million a year intake. That's money that they collected from the citizens for the garbage. At the same time, they had a 4% increase in material. It's growing and growing and growing, and it's taking a lot of money, but it's not really doing a lot of service. We have the highest cost of garbage in the United States of America, and we're higher than Hawaii. I mean, so what happens is they're not regulated by any body on their prices. So the administration says, well, we're going to get a 3% increase this year. We're going to get a 10% increase this year. And they just ask for it on the budget. We, the assembly, are the ones that are supposed to say, no, prove that you need that. We're going to have a paved landfill. Instead of gravel roads in the landfill, we're going to have paved roads. I live on a gravel road. Most people in the borough live on a gravel road. We're giving them paved storage areas. Maybe I'm a little excited tonight, but I'm trying to help the citizens. I'm trying to get you guys educated. We need to help the people. This isn't fair. Big Lake actually, I just got a text here yesterday. Big Lake had an award. And what it was is one of the poorest cities in America. So why are we paying the most for our garbage? Why? We need to work on it. Thank you.
Mr. McKee.
Boy, that's hard to follow. Look, the only thing I would say is this. I am absolutely astounded by what I heard from the assembly on Point McKenzie, that we can never close it. It must stay there forever, like Charlie on the MTA. You'll never get off. Mr. Sumner went through it and put it very bluntly. No matter what the consultant says, no matter what happens, we can never close Point McKenzie. If another rowboat never puts in there, we can never close Point McKenzie. There's something absolutely insane about that.
Ms. Bovee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to bring forward a constituent concern as far as COVID testing goes. It is still a real challenge for the northern communities to get tested. So I don't know if that's something that the borough can play a role in. And I know at one point we did do some rural COVID testing sites, but I know a lot of people are not getting tested because they don't want to drive all the way to Wasilla and sit in line for hours. So if we could make that more accessible, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, well, I was very pleased you accepted that federal grant money to repair the piling with sleeves. I want to thank Ms. Dolan for working on so hard on that for, I believe, 12 years, 2 assemblies terms and 2 mayor terms. We were trying to come up with the money to fix these piling and sleeves, and it just seems like the federal government stepped in and was willing to help us. So I'm pleased that you're willing to do that. All of minor issues, other issues, I guess, and they're big issues, I guess, Mr. McKee, I understand them, but this still was a big day to take that money and put it to use. And I have confidence that that's exactly what the borough will do. Redistricting, I do like the idea of partnering or moving north at Denali Borough. I think that is the best interest of this borough in the future. You know, we have Cantwell and Healy up there that have common interests with us. And so I like that idea. The garbage, you know, right now I'm paying $132 a month for a smaller private firm. I was paying almost $290 a month for a larger company, national company, to pick up. You know, with both of them, I appreciated the fact that there was good service and it was moving right along. So I realize there's a cost to garbage. And I think the problem we've had with our garbage system was we did run in the red real quickly for many years. And it got to be a point where it was just like more work than it was worth. It was just, we just weren't balancing the budget. I guess it was that simple. And that was corrected. And I hate to see us go the other direction. Even though, Mr. Tu, I like the simplicity of your idea of a $10, per load, but I understand the loss. You know, if they're talking about $31 per loss, that mounts up pretty quickly. So I'm a little worried about that. And that's probably why I voted to break the tie on that. You know, the Iditarod Trail, when a case is litigated, and a case, and Mr. Fusco, you were the plaintiffs. You sued the state of Alaska to quiet title and to secure your land. You lost cold. That thing went on for months of evidence. And now to come in here and start saying that the trail is not where it's supposed to be legally is beyond me, because it went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court remanded it and approved it. And that's just the way the legal system works. You had your day in court, but to come in here and start implicating that it's not the correct trail and the correct crossing certainly flies in the face of a legal case. And so with that, I'll say good night, and we'll adjourn at 7:45.